So lads, Geno Auriemma is just out here completely moving the goalpost when it comes to Paige Bueckers. And I'm going to be honest here. What Geno Auriemma said a couple of days ago is the truth. It is a fact. It is a complete fact. It is the truth. But the fact that Geno and the UConn Mafia have had to flip up, because I think he's just given up on the season. He knows Paige Bueckers is not going to win a college championship. He knows that she's not. And that's something that he's probably had to accept. That this UConn team, unless Easy Foot is healthy and Paige is healthy, there's been a lot of top 5 recruits that just have not panned out. Like Ice Brady is really struggling, and they looked great for a while, but I think they've been a bit iffy. But this is what he has said about Paige Bueckers and winning a national championship.
This notion that you have to win a national championship or multiple national championships in order to be considered, a generational type player, an amazing type player. There are a lot of great players that have had amazing careers that have never won a national championship, that have never been to a Final Four. Okay? So, you can't use that as a gauge for where she would be. You can just, I think, use my thought process is, how much did she dominate the college basketball world during the 4 years that she played here? And if you took her off our team, how many Final Fours would we have made? Yeah. How many national championship games would we have played in? What opportunities will we have if she wasn't on our team?
Yeah, but she's carried you.
And how many great All-Americans has she played with? I don't say this, but I think the number is 0.
Jay's a bit of a shot to some of the players that he recruited, because, first of all, it's a bit of a shot at himself, because, yeah, he didn't, no great All-Americans, but how many, there are 3 number 1 recruits on this current UConn team. 3. You got Aaliyah Edwards, you had Nika Mule, who was a player. You took Lou Lopez Seneschal from Fairfield, who was one of the best graduate transfers you could possibly have had that year. You had teams. You had teams. You had Dorka Uhas. If you look at the players that she's had, it's not like she's playing with scrubs. Like she is playing with scrubs or anything. She is still one of the best players in UConn history. She is. Paige is. And I mean that. And it's funny because he's like, oh, we need to stop with this narrative. Do you know who started the narrative? The damn UConn Mafia. Your players. Breanna Steward. Diana Taurasi. They're the players that started this. Especially Stewie. I want to see what... I'm going to list the players that Breanna Steward played with. UConn 2013. And again, look. People are like, oh, would Stewie have made all those championship games with Iowa? Who knows? Maybe. That is how good Stewie is. And we have to admit, that is how good Stewie is. But Mariah Jefferson, WNBA player, number 2 pick. Steph Dolson, Kia Stokes, WNBA player. That was the first team. This is just off the top of my head. They're definitely WNBA players that are not currently still in the WNBA that have been on those teams. Then, the next year, still all of those players again, basically. In 2013-14. In 2014-15, the team added... Who did the team add that year? The team added Kia Nurse. Kia Nurse is a WNBA All-Star. The team added Gabby Williams. The team there are multiple top 5 picks and WNBA All-Stars in every one of her teams. In their final year. In Stewie's final year, she had Mariah Jefferson, who was the number 2 pick to her in that draft. They had Gabby Williams. They had Nafisa Collier. They had the number 1 recruit in the nation, Katie Lou Samuelson, who, by the way, Fee and Katie Lou are like 4 and 5 all time in UConn scoring. Like, they are the players that they brought in. They are the players that were brought in to UConn. UConn had All-Americans everywhere with Breanna Steward. And just because you play with All-Americans does not mean you're better than someone who has a carry job. Yes, Breanna Steward, by the way, 4 national championships in a row. She's one of the greatest college players ever. And like, Breanna Steward is one of the very few players that people are like, oh, could they have done what Caitlin Clark did at Iowa? That you could answer, maybe. Honestly, like, Stewie's been the best player of this era, and I don't understand what, like, Stewie has, like, obviously Asia won her other MVP. They have the same amount of MVPs. Stewie has more championships, same amount of finals MVPs, and Stewie is probably going to win more championships. I think Asia has an extra depoy, but like, I don't understand how this suddenly became the Asia era and not the Stewie era, because again, like, well, to be fair, Stewie did play on good teams too, but like, I don't know, like, it's been even anyway. But it's funny because when the narrative was about Caitlin Clark, Geno would have never said this. When that was the narrative about Caitlin Clark, because Geno was thinking, you know what, we always win championships. Well, Geno, you're gonna go 10 years without winning the championship, because you've been overtaken by Dawn Staley as far as just being a better team. Like, South Carolina are way better than you guys. Dawn Staley's a way better coach than you. And not only that, the top guard prospects are going to start going to other schools where they can really shine. They're not going to go to UConn. They're not going to go to USC anymore. They're going to go somewhere where they can shine and not walk you to another national championship, because you're not winning one anytime soon, Geno. And it's going to be interesting, because is this conversation going to happen in 4 years' time about Sarah Strong with how good she is? Because really, Paige is the first number 1 recruit to go to UConn and not win a championship. She is the first one in the last 20 years, really. The first big name player to go to UConn and not win. And that doesn't mean Paige is not one of the greatest ever. We've seen what Paige has done. She's been brilliant. But the reality is that she was not able to carry like a Caitlin Clark was able to carry. She was not able to carry like some players were able to carry. And unfortunately, there was an even more stacked team out in South Carolina that you guys were just not as good as. Not as good as in 2022, not as good as this year. So yeah, that is pretty much it. It's funny though how the narrative when it came to Caitlin Clark was that she needed to win to be considered great. And as soon as UConn, and being pushed by the UConn mafia, but as soon as UConn know that they're not going to win, and they know that one of their all-time favorites, one of the greatest players in UConn history, Paige Bueckers, is not going to win, it then becomes, oh, you know, you don't need to win. There's been so many great players that haven't won, which is a fact. Kelsey Plum, Elena Deladon, these players, like Elena Deladon went to Delaware. What she was doing was unbelievable. What Kelsey Plum was doing at Washington was unbelievable. There's so many of these players. How many players that went to Notre Dame? I get it, Notre Dame won in 2019. But like, how great they were. Like, people don't understand where it's like, okay, yeah, Notre Dame, like, they didn't win all these championships, but it's like, man, Notre Dame literally beat the freaking elite UConn team at their best. Like, that team with Jackie Young, Breanna Mabry, and Arike. Like, there's been a lot of great college teams, a lot of great college players. But it's funny that Geno Auriemma's effectively made the argument that people have been making all year about why Caitlin Clark is at least in that conversation for the greatest college player of all time, was shut down by your former player Stewie because he won with you guys, and then her coach in college has gone back on it just to defend Paige. Either way, though, it's funny to see. See you guys.